everyone, and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie DeVan, and joining me today are some industry experts who are here to talk about a new initiative called PA FAFSA Go. I'll start out, Karen Rubican. She is a school counselor at Canon-McMillan High School, and she's representing the Pennsylvania Association of College Admission Counselors, as well as PA School Counselors Association, also known as PSCA. I also have Will Lindsey, who is also a PHEAA employee. He's a PA School Services Manager, so he's representing PHEAA as well as myself. Alyssa Dobson over here is a Financial Aid Director at Slippery Rock University, and she's representing PASFAA, the Pennsylvania Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. And then last but definitely not least, we have Dr. McCurdy, who is representing the Department of Education, PA Department of Education. Welcome you all. And this is going to be a lively discussion, but it's going to be packed with lots of great information. Just to get started, FAFSA Go, or PA FAFSA Go, is a new initiative. It's a campaign that you all have been working on. Tell us a little bit about it. Like, what's new about it? How did it get started? Give us some information.
So I guess I'll start and talk about, it was an initiative that came out of the National Governors Association. We were tasked with pulling together some partners through the state. So, of course, PASFAA and PACAC and PHEAA and PSCA were the ones that came to mind as to who would be best to sit around the table and talk about the FAFSA campaign in Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania does not have universal FAFSA, which is a requirement for high school students to complete the FAFSA for graduation. We know that the FAFSA completion has been down the last couple of years because of COVID and other circumstances. So we wanted to see what we could do in Pennsylvania to make students aware that they should complete a FAFSA. We know that over $1 million was left on the table last year in Pell Grants. And so we just want to make sure that everyone is aware. We want to encourage as many people to complete the FAFSA, and that's really kind of how we got started.
Sounds good. Now, just to back up a little bit, some of our listeners may be not familiar with FAFSA. So FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is the primary application that students will need to complete in order to be considered for federal, state, and then school aid. Also, for those who aren't aware, FAFSA has been around now for 50 years. I think it was July of 1992 when it kind of came into play. So great topic, important topic. Mm-hmm. And I think now is also a good time. The new application opened up in October of 2022. And a lot of times you'll get a dip with students completing it. So now's a great time to kind of push, give everybody a push and the idea to say keep completing those FAFSA applications that are out there. So what's the plan? Like, what's the strategy going to look like when we're kind of like trying to connect everyone together? We know there are several different entities that are involved. And so how do the pieces kind of fit together? We have everyone from the admission side, the financial aid side, some community-based organizations that are out there. How do we piece it together to produce the results that you're looking for?
Well, from my perspective, I think that it becomes important as an institution of higher education to make sure that you're not just concerned with your current students, but you're doing that reach back into the funnel for your incoming freshmen. And so I think that overlap is important for work with both PACAC and the School Counselors Association, because you're definitely touching the same students at that point. And so, we just try to ensure that our lines of communication are the same. I think that's a great reason to use those that are looking at the video can see some of the materials that are available for the campaign.
I'll pull one up while you're talking.
Yeah, to ensure a consistent and similar message. And so from me and my perspective from Institution of Higher Ed, I think that's probably the most critical link.
Don't you think a lot of other states do it a little bit better too? I think Tennessee has the FAFSA Frenzy, and we were aware of that for several years. We've never come together in Pennsylvania to create something similar. They used to do the FAFSA Goal Sundays on Super Bowl Sunday, but those campaigns weren't really successful. People wanted to watch the Super Bowl and maybe not complete a FAFSA. So I think this was a logical way for us to really collaborate, and I think we've gotten a lot of traction and momentum going forward. We have a website, and I think that's a really good place to start for whether you're at an institution of higher education or if you're at a high school, there's lots of resources. If you just Google PA FAFSA Go, you'll come to that website, and there are publications that you can order. PHEAA provides those. Do you want to talk about the pieces that we are offering?
Yeah, and before I get into the pieces a little bit, going back to the strategy, I think what's critical is awareness and outreach. And oftentimes we do a lot of that, but we do it in our own ways. And I think this is an opportunity to collaborate with various agencies that have access to populations of students, families, partners that we may not have individually. So I think it's critical for us to collaborate, to continue to promote awareness about outreach, but more so to let families know how important the FAFSA application is. So through that, again, through this collaboration, as you can see, there are a couple pieces that we created. The good news is all of our pieces are free at no cost to our students and families, to our partners that are promoting the FAFSA application. And we've got 4 pieces that essentially were created. One on scholarship tips, very important as well. Always looking for ways to supplement what you may be eligible in terms of Pell Grants or state grants, but oftentimes there may be a gap. So there's a scholarship tip sheet out there that we have. We also have a FAFSA tip sheet that provides a lot of the information that families need to have on hand to complete the FAFSA application, right? Reminding them of the deadlines, when to complete it, what information you need to have with you while you complete the FAFSA. We also have a publication that's called Creating a Federal Account, the FSAID. That's your basic electronic way of signing the FAFSA, right? So there are some steps. That's essentially the first step that a student and a parent would need to complete. And then finally, I think probably the most rewarding piece is we have a I filed the FAFSA little poster that gives you bragging rights, so to speak, that counselors could potentially use on their wall of fame to say, hey, all of these students have completed a FAFSA. That may encourage others to complete a FAFSA as well. So those are just a few of publications. These are available on PHEAA.org. We do have an online order toolkit that you can go in and order that, and we would send those pieces to you directly at no cost.
And another thing I want to mention, many of those publications are available in Spanish and English, so that's also a good point to mention. So thanks for sharing that. Karen, what about you?
Well, the benefit for counselors is consistency, peer support, reminding families of all student post-secondary interests that this money is available to them possibly. It might mean loans and grants. It might mean scholarships at our institutions of higher education. But doing the FAFSA opens doors. Mm-hmm. Not doing the FAFSA has the potential to close doors. So it's just really important that we let families know that it's available, and we support them if they need it.
I think sometimes when you get touch points from a lot of different people too, there's like that trust component. I trust my school counselor, so she's giving me this information. I trust the school admissions counselor or the financial aid office that I'm conversing with. And so that's kind of a good message that there's consistency, but these are trusted people giving me this message.
Right. And by now at my school, students have heard about it from the school at least 5 times. In big sessions, individual sessions, in parent nights, and financial aid nights.
Yay!
So, and our January fun will be that pledge brag sheet. There will be a bulletin board for us at school. So, keeping that conversation going throughout the rest of the year to May.
Are you going to try to do like pit the homerooms against each other to have pizza
we are
party
about
or
free breakfast.
Oh,
so we'll try to do something with feeding kids.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of eating for free, so I'm sure they would.
Yeah, perfect.
So I have a question for you as you were talking about that. For those students or those families who are skeptical about completing the FAFSA, what tips or tools can you provide or could you share to kind of encourage them to get it done and to do it, and that it's going to benefit them in the long run because it's going to connect them to the resources to kind of help them reach
Well, I think
goal.
one of the benefits that colleges give us is the net price calculator.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're using the net price calculator correctly and we're honest about our income and our GPA and all the things that were being factored in, that's a good way of showing a family what that actual cost might be, considering what their income is. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of an objective, impersonal kind of way to have that conversation. I have assisted families in doing the FAFSA. I've had students that were considered independent, so they didn't have a mom or a dad to do the FAFSA with them. I've assisted grandparents. We have financial aid events where PHEAA comes and does that work with our families. We try really hard to demystify the process. And I can't say that we're having 100% success because we don't have 100% FAFSA completion.
Right.
But we're not that far off at Canon-McMillan. The worry is the people that aren't doing it are the ones that would benefit the most, which is what we see in the research, right? So, which is why we're doing this work and trying to collaborate and to be a team and how we have the conversations.
And May 1st is important
It is.
for Pennsylvania.
It
And I
is.
don't think a lot of families realize that if you miss May 1, you might miss out on, is it $5,000 now?
Yeah, but $57.50.
Oh, so
Yeah, it's up there.
it's more than
Yeah.
$5,000.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then just to add to that, because one of the main reasons that we see hesitation is that families are often under the impression that they'll be on the hook to pay. Like I hear that phrase so often, I'm not going to do that FAFSA with my child because I don't want to be on the hook to pay. And it's a fairly brief conversation to have to explain that doing the FAFSA in no way puts you in that position. That can be really helpful in helping with some of that hesitation. And then also some families, they use the phrase, we don't qualify for anything, which
Right.
we know that they would probably qualify for loans, but we can talk about that later. We don't qualify for anything, so we're just not going to do the FAFSA. But then you see that they take out private loans to pay for the costs that they can't cover. And so, a brief conversation about the interest rates and the other favorable terms that a student could use if they did the FAFSA to leverage the federal loan system. That's just two other points that I try to help my families work through as they're
And
facing
Tiffanie,
no FAFSA.
no, that's an excellent point. And the other thing too, if I could add, you asked, about trust. Again, I think it's been captured a little bit. These are trusted organizations that have a direct impact on higher education.
Right.
In addition to that is, we're pretty fortunate at PHEAA. We have 13 higher education access partners, right, that are strategically located within the state. They manage specific counties. They're your go-to as well. So if you're not sure on how to answer a question, or if you have questions in general, reach out to them. Most likely, we work with universities, we work with high schools. Universities host FAFSA completion sessions. We do a lot of financial aid nights. They're out in the circuit. They're out there. So again, if you're unsure, these are all trusted resources here that we want to make sure that you are aware of, as you're listening to this, and that a simple phone call or email can go a long way.
You're almost stealing my thunder there because I was going to mention the access partners. And also because you were saying, like, for you all, you've reached out, you said at least 5 times. Alyssa, you all are interacting with students and families and letting them know the importance, but not all schools have those counselors. Not all schools, post-secondary schools, have folks in their financial aid offices who are able to really work and connect with those students to understand the importance of how to complete the form, the importance of completing the form, and then help them through navigating how to actually get it done. And we do have those resources, so we can kind of come in and bridge the gap for those folks who just don't have the resources. We are those resources. So whether it's a FAFSA completion night, whether it's just coming in and explaining how financial aid works, the importance of completing the FAFSA, and what happens if you don't complete it, you really minimize what you may receive in financial aid or assistance to get things done. So all good pieces to keep in mind. For those who need access to either those resources, PHEAA.org, as Will mentioned, you can actually find out who the access partner is for each region. I'll share that information a little later on also. Kim, anything else you wanted to add on that piece before we move forward?
Well, I guess I would just add, this is an opportunity for folks to focus on FAFSA. And so, we're all partners here at the table, but we want to increase the network of partners that we have across the state. And one of the ways that we're doing that is if you go to the PA FAFSA Go website, there is an opportunity to focus on FAFSA. Focus is an acronym. We love our acronyms in education. And so facilitating events starting October 1st, compiling resources, uniting team members, and supporting FAFSA completion. And so anyone can log on to the website. They can check the little box, give us your information that you want to focus on FAFSA, and then we're going to be sending out resources periodically. I try to do once a week or once every 2 weeks. I send emails to the field about the resources that we have on the webpage, resources from PHEAA. Philly College Prep Roundtable did a FAFSA 101 presentation, and so I sent the link out to folks before the holidays. Right now we have 103 partners, so super excited about that, but would love to increase those numbers. There's so many folks working in the college access field or college success field, and so as many people that we can get signed up for that. Additionally, for the 103, I did put out a call to the field to share some of their best practices. And so over the coming weeks, I'm going to be sharing those out through those emails. And so if you're not sure where to start, or maybe you're doing something, but you want to add something, some of the things that folks have done, a secondary school, they created a QR code that they passed out at their FAFSA night, and everything FAFSA is going to be in that Google file. Awesome. And so you have a QR code, and you can just keep that handy and just look at it when you need information. I thought that was really good. Somebody is doing a FAFSA phone blitz. And I thought that was a nice little catchy kind of thing to be doing. So there's just a lot happening, and I think we can come together, and like I said, the more people at the table, the more students are going to be touched and helped. They're going to hear the information multiple times from a lot of different sources, and that's going to be really good.
So you mentioned that and folks being able to help. I know when I went to Department of Ed's website, PA Department of Ed's website, you can actually see, you'll see the PA FAFSA Go initiative, and you can see there's a little button or link for how they can get involved. What other things can they do besides going to the link? Is there anything else that you want them to focus on, or kind of like spread the word?
Well, I think strategies, utilizing the access partners in the field definitely is something that they could do. There are resources and links. PA College Advising Corps is another organization in Pennsylvania that they have a robust website and are in high schools throughout the state. So there's a lot there. Again, we have the toolkits available. There's also the trackers, so schools can track their FAFSA completion, and that's really important to know if your school, if your high school students are getting the message. You know, if you have 100 students, but 5 of them have completed their FAFSA at this point, you probably need to do a little more outreach. And then, you know, there's also a toolkit for the institutions of higher education. Alyssa has created a whole FAFSA Go experience for her work study students to work those new and returning students.
Yeah, we've been doing this now since about 2015 with the advent of early FAFSA. We recognized some opportunity there and wanted to make sure that we were fully on board with the change with the early FAFSA brought, being October 1st. And so we crafted we called our FAFSA Go team. And it is comprised of student workers that are largely supervised by graduate assistants. Of course, there's some training and overlap as the students, age out. But I like it because it benefits everybody. The student workers are learning really valuable skills that they can take with them when they're done earning their degree. Graduate assistants, of course, learn to supervise students and work towards goals for their projects. And then, of course, our FAFSA completion rate goes up because they're always doing the peer-to-peer outreach calling campaigns, which Kim had mentioned, as well as boots on the ground and mingling with their peers on campus in an effort to educate and foster the FAFSA completion broadly. And there's the resource guide that will kind of, it just provides an outline for you to build one at your institution of higher education as well. And there's even some concepts there. If you were a school counselor, you could certainly, impart some of those duties or tasks or jobs that are listed in there to your students on your high school campus in order to do some of the same types of work.
I think Karen's adapted some of that too.
I'm in process, yeah. Well, I had a nice Christmas break and didn't do my job, Kim, but I'll get it done.
No. But you wrote the article for the newsletter,
and PSCA is coming out for PSCA, and we're going to be actually talking in a week or so with another advocacy organization. So really great things happening.
Yep.
And I think what we hope is that we can kind of gather all of that good anecdotal information and share it out, so we just kind of keep the momentum going. Past May 1st.
All right.
And the future FAFSAs.
All right. And for many we've mentioned May 1st already. So May 1st is actually one of the earliest deadlines for the Pennsylvania State Grant. So if you don't have your FAFSA completed, your state grant application completed, if it's your first time completing the Pennsylvania state grant, you may miss out on some free funding there. So that's why they're mentioning May 1st. Also, schools have different deadlines for when they want their FAFSA to be completed. So I always tell students, and I'm sure you are too, complete it as early as possible. It opens up October 1st of the year prior to when the academic year is starting. So I always say knock it out, because again, some funding is limited. So you don't want to miss the mark. And also, once they get it done, they can focus on other things. They can focus on the scholarships, like Will mentioned, and maybe just enjoying their academic school year, and they don't have to worry about, whether or not they've completed it, whether or not they're going to get the funding. They kind of know where they're standing and they'll know how to prepare.
And they can go back and add schools too. I think that's important to mention.
Right.
A lot of students, if they don't know where they're going, they're like, well, I'm just going to wait.
Yeah, you can put up to 10 on there, and if those 10 don't end up being the 1 or 2 that you're now thinking about, you can change them. So there's a lot of flexibility there for sure. And timing used to be even more important with the Ready to Succeed funding, being a limited funding source, but hopefully we'll continue to be well funded into the future. But there are other sources that are first file, first served, even at the institution.
Yeah, and the point here is, even if you're unsure of your future, your higher education, apply. Right? Circumstances changes, and at least you've met the deadlines. The one benefit of the Pennsylvania State Grant Program, so long as you're eligible, you apply on time, we can fund every student, right? So the first come, first serve is kind of out of the equation for that. However, as Alyssa mentioned, there are other programs that could be first come, first serve. So the sooner, the better.
And then Pell is $7,300 next year, 73 something.
$73.95.
Yeah.
They just mentioned the increase.
So for 23-24, if you're the neediest of students, you're going to miss out, and that's an entitlement. So no matter when you complete your FAFSA, you would get that. So that's really, really, really important. We talk about college affordability, and those are the pieces.
Absolutely. Now, the one part that I do want to talk about is policy. So is universal FAFSA a good idea? And hopefully someone can explain what universal FAFSA is. I do know that I think it was Louisiana was the very first to implement that. Not all states
I think
are participating, but
Texas.
Is it Texas? I think
there are 5
Alabama,
or 6, I think.
Louisiana, Alabama, Illinois, Texas, and I think California. I'm not sure if California is completely on board or if they were headed there, but I had them.
So basically, we would either write it into school code, or it would have to be a bill that would be introduced in the state legislature to make that a high school graduation requirement. So before a student could graduate, they would have to complete their FAFSA and or complete a waiver if they were going into the military or had other plans going to a job that they weren't going to utilize a post-secondary institution. They would have to complete that as a graduation requirement. I don't know, Karen, you're probably most closely related to it, so I'll let you go first. Are you yay or nay?
I am nay. I am a firm nay on requiring it.
Yeah.
Because there are students that are going to go to work and do well. Perhaps they went to a CTC and they're going to graduate and get and work in their field, and that's what you want. That's wonderful. There might be students that want to do the military or do ROTC, and it'll be a non-conversation for them, or the military academies. There's lots of students that may not need it.
Right.
That doesn't negate the people that do. But I think there's other ways to get that outcome besides requiring it for every student in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of information that's private. Now, I know that information is protected, and the only people that need to see it are the ones that see it. But if you are in a position where you don't need a FAFSA because of your post-secondary plan, then you shouldn't have to do it, in my opinion. And there's a lot of other things that they have to do to graduate.
Sure.
So they're kind of busy already.
Yeah.
I would worry about another sort of unfunded mandate too, with our lack of resources currently in high schools. It would be just one more, I don't want to say burden because I love the FAFSA, but one more thing to put on the plate of already overworked individuals.
And that kind of ties into the ratio with school counselors to students that are out there. And we already don't have enough school counselors to kind of think, what was it, PA? It needs to be 250. The
250 to 1 is the recommendation.
250 to 1, and we're at
like 364 to 1.
So again, that could really bog down a lot of schools that are out there. Will, your take on it?
Yeah, I think there's still some unanswered questions, right? School districts will vary based on the support and their ability to do that. as the mandate, I think some of the states have opt-out options right now where, if there's a specific circumstance, a family can complete that. I think that the challenge is, if there's a challenge, is the institution, the school, pursuing a student to complete the FAFSA, right? And pursuing a parent to do that, depending on what that, graduation requirement is. So there's going to be a support system that needs to be in place. However, I think, if on the positive light of things, there's enough support in organizations that would support the effort in terms of helping FAFSA completion overall, right?
Yep.
And when I say that, I mean the outreach, promoting awareness, providing additional reporting to support schools should we get to a scenario where it becomes mandatory. But I think we're keeping a close eye on what other states are doing. Obviously, I think there's some impact to what that could look like from a Pennsylvania state grant program and the program that we administer with projections and other things like that, and how we calculate awards for students and how we estimate. So there's a lot of things to factor. I think what's important is that we continue to move the needle, and the reason we've got this PA FAFSA Go is to inch closely to a 100% completion, right? And then I think this collaboration is helping us achieve that. And we'll share and talk about some numbers a little bit where we are with FAFSA completion in comparison to last year. But I think so long as we can collaborate, work together on a mission that is really targeting at increasing FAFSA completions overall within the Commonwealth, I think we're establishing those goals, and we're working towards that while evaluating what a mandate would look like down the line.
I think I'd rather see the 250-to-1 ratio happen, have that mandated in
Me
Pennsylvania.
too. I vote yes for that.
Yeah, I think that would probably solve mental health problems.
Right.
The
needs are
those
tremendous.
yeah, so I think that would probably serve our Pennsylvania learners much more than a mandatory FAFSA would. I think we're doing a good job. I think with the access partners in the field and all of the community-based organizations that are working on this, I think this campaign might be the answer to universal FAFSA, and I'm excited to see, we'll do it this year, and hopefully all of you are willing to do it with us next year. And, we'll just keep continuing to build that momentum, and I think we'll have a really good answer to universal FAFSA. I don't think we need it.
It's interesting, to be honest with you. Prior to doing any research or talking or listening to you, I was like, absolutely, they should have it. There should be universal, and it should be mandated. And then I wasn't listening to all the connected pieces, the things that you need in order to get it done and for it to make it happen. But I think when you have, initiatives like PA FAFSA Go, you can still achieve the end result. The one reason why I was thinking originally I would like to see it mandated is because I can't tell you how many students you have who say, I'm absolutely not going to go to college. I'm not going to any post-secondary school. They get to July and they call us and they'll say, hey, I changed my mind.
Right.
I want to get some funding. How do I get the free money?
Yep.
You kind of missed all those deadlines that we were talking about.
Yep.
But in listening to you all, this can still allow those students to kind of say, you know what, complete it if you're not certain.
It's
or if
just
you do have more
and
it's just a
counselors out
really
there.
good nudge.
Yeah. So get it
Right.
done. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
so this was eye-opening for me just for that part of the discussion, and even doing some prep before to kind of say, well, I'll see the other side of it.
Right.
But I do hope more states are doing many more things to help their students all across the board to get something done, because by doing nothing, we know a lot of students are falling through these loopholes, and they're just not, by the time they decide what they really want to do, they just don't have the funding. And I always say, even to those students, it doesn't mean that you can't go. It just means you may have to find some alternative plans. You may have to defer it in the manner in which you want it. Maybe you can't be the school that you wanted to go to because you didn't apply and get the funding in there, in time. But it doesn't mean that you can't go next semester or that you can't go to a cheaper school, right now in order to get those things done. So good points from you all.
I think it's important for schools, whether they're the post-secondary schools or the secondary schools, to make sure families know that this is available for trade schools, technical schools,
Absolutely.
two-year colleges. This isn't just your brick and mortar for your experiences. I think there's kind of a stigma, or not a stigma, but maybe a stereotype about who would qualify for financial aid, and it isn't your trade school student. So I think that's an important conversation we need to be having as well.
I totally agree.
It definitely is. And then along with that, I think there's this idea amongst our less fortunate college-aged families that they can't afford it, that the higher ed piece. So they may avoid the FAFSA and institutions of higher ed altogether because they think that they can't afford it. What they don't know is that they're avoiding the answer that would allow them to go. With the maximum federal grant and state grant, you can attend, with the recent increases, I believe you can attend any state system school if you commute for free if you're the most neediest, a 0 or close to 0 EFC.
I think the wages that are being offered, out of COVID and all of that, I think that's a deterrent sometimes for students to choose a post-secondary. But, once you get into the workforce and maybe there's a cap or you can't go any further in that particular field without some training. And so even if you're planning to go to work because of those wages, completing a FAFSA to have that as an option in your back pocket is really important.
I would agree.
Years ago, I did a training with the Office of Postsecondary Ed, and they talked about getting what you need when you need it, which I really think that's an important. That's stuck with me for years and years. So maybe it's a 2-year degree and you're working. Then you decide you've hit that wall. You need something else. You go back and get something more, and maybe your employer sends you. There's so many ways to get where you want to be, and it doesn't always have to be straight out of high school into a 4-year college. I think there's just so many opportunities, and I just hope that students are finding the resources that I believe that we're all sharing, and taking advantage of doing some legwork and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, that's excellent, because as we're sharing some of these discussion, that's a lot of what we try to discuss in financial aid nights. I know it's hard to tell a family there are ways that you can save for college. There are ways that you can minimize costs for college, right? Starting earlier, dual enrollment, commuting, the 2+2, 2-year community college, taking summer courses at a community college. So there are ways that you can kind of minimize overall costs. In many cases or instances, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice, right? And to do that. Secondly, I think we've talked about it. There are 2 big things here, 2 factors. What's the number one reason students don't get aid?
They don't apply.
They don't apply, number one. What's the second biggest reason? We've talked about May 1st, deadlines, right? So again, I think there's a consistent theme in PA FAFSA Go is really here to highlight those things, right? Make sure you apply and make sure you apply on time. Because I think we've talked about estimates. That's roughly about, if you're on the neediest of neediest students, about $12,000 that you're leaving on the table right there, which could get you into many schools, community college, state school potentially if you're commuting, as you mentioned. So again,
even a private school. You add the institutional money that they might give you.
That's the minimum.
That's right.
Minimum.
That's the minimum. So again, I think, and that's what we want to make sure that our students and families are aware, but also our partners, right? Because our ask here is that you continue to share this mission, and PHEAA's mission is creating affordable access to higher education, and this is exactly what we're talking about. We're getting out there, we're getting the word out there to you for you to help promote that. This is kind of train the trainer approach, right? We want to make sure that you're aware of all the resources that you have at your disposal to be able to relay that to students and families.
Yep, absolutely. So I think hopefully this discussion is helping all those who are listening, whether you're an educator, a professional, someone out there who just knows a student who needs to complete the FAFSA. Hopefully it's building the momentum to say keep going. We're not at May 1st. We're just slightly over January 1st,
4 months.
2023.
4 months to go.
So we have some time in order to to push it and to get that done. So you do the FAFSA. You complete the state grant application if you're a first-time applicant. You continue to look for the scholarships. I tell students all the time, when you're looking for scholarships, whether you're looking for your grants and scholarships, for those who aren't aware, it's the free money. So why pull out that student loan or even hit up your parents super hard if you haven't yet looked for the free money first? So don't leave anything on the table, as Will has said. I always tell students that as well. Don't leave any resource on the table. But hopefully all students are getting this done. Again, don't forget that if you need some help, there are resources. So whether you're reaching out to your high school counselors, whether you're going to PDE's website, talking to your post-secondary schools, reaching out to folks at PHEAA, we are here to assist and we're here to help. How do you think it's going so far? What's the impact? Do we know?
So I can share some statistics a little bit in terms of FAFSA completion compared for the 23-24 academic year compared to 22-23.
Okay.
Now, this is not the sole impact, right? There's a lot of efforts that are being done out there, but at least what we're seeing in terms of FAFSA applications, we're up 4.3%.
Great.
Which I think there's still a lot of room to grow because last year was a pretty tough year. That's positive. And, you know, the same trend is the same for the Pennsylvania State Grant. That's up 4.8. And again, this was as of December 30th, 2022.
Okay.
So I think we're seeing progress. As Dr. Kim McCurdy mentioned, we have 103 schools that are partnering to promote that. And so I think traction, you know, I think we'd like to see that number continue to grow. As a result of that, we've seen more universities and high schools schedule financial aid nights or FAFSA completion sessions. One of the things for FAFSA completion sessions, if you wanted to find out if there was one in your local region, you can reach out to your guidance counselor, but we are also posting FAFSA completion workshops that are being promoted by institutions on our website. So those are just a few things that I think are showing that there's traction. Today's podcast, to me, is a success, right, on PA FAFSA Go. You are able to get, you know, organizations to come and talk about it. And really, you know,
we're also on a conference circuit.
We're in a conference.
Yeah, we are.
Absolutely.
We have a road show. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of work, you know, that needs to be recognized from all parties involved because, as you and hopefully can tell from the discussion today, we're pretty passionate about this and wanting to make sure that students, you know, have access to that. We've also seen an increase, at least from a PHEAA perspective, and one of the benefits is, as a high school counselor, you can gain access to our systems to track FAFSA completion. Okay, so we've seen an increase in remote access agreements, which is an agreement that schools have to complete and send back to us to access data about their students completing. So we've seen an uptick in new schools wanting access to that information. So again, I think, you know, consider them small wins. And hopefully,
we've got traction.
I think it's wonderful.
And we can continue with some of those.
We're chugging along.
Right.
So that's what we're, you know, I think at least I'm seeing and what we're doing with this effort.
And I think it's grassroots, right? You know, I don't think there's a policy that's going to fix this. I think it's boots on the ground. Let's get the word out. Let's give people one-on-one assistance if they need it. Let's give them resources. You know, provide all the things.
Right. And we tend to not talk about money.
That's right.
So this is an opportunity to talk about money in an objective, impersonal. We don't know what you make. This is something everybody should be doing. We're not making assumptions about who would get it, who wouldn't, and who would qualify and who wouldn't. So I think there's tremendous value in the messaging. And I have to give a shout out to PHEAA. I'm part of a South Hills consortium of schools, Canon-McMillan, and I represent Canon-McMillan on the consortium. We had 500 families register for our financial aid event in the fall, virtually.
That's outstanding.
So when we think about code,
And that's what, 12 high schools?
12 high schools, and it's all South Hills schools. And what I loved about it, and I hope we stay virtual forever for financial aid. I feel like it's the one thing we can talk about in the privacy of our own homes, right? I'm a parent too. My children, we've done the FAFSA for my children. But you can be on your couch with your family, hearing the information, talking about it. You know, students aren't talking about money with their parents until the parent says we're not paying, and then they're like, what? What do you mean you're not paying?
Right.
The first time they're hearing it's when they're a senior in high school. So this is a chance to have a conversation that's value added, that's about what we want to do right now, that may or may not change your process of looking for schools, but it really puts the student and that family kind of in the front seat, the driver's seat of what their process is for after high school. I think it's incredible. So PHEAA did that, and it was wonderful. And PHEAA offers virtual events that you could be in a rural part of the state and not have access in your community, but you can hop onto a webinar.
It's a good point that you make because I do get that a lot where when COVID kicked in, we kind of like flipped to virtual and everyone was kind of afraid. And then they realized the convenience with the virtual option that is out there. And sometimes I get parents, I've even had some counselors, I won't shout them out, who'll say, hey, you know what, I can't make it, but can can you guys just host it? Sure, we're hosting it. We're going to do it. It's virtual. They had a recording to go with it, and it worked well. So that one virtual session kind of was on repeat over and over, and they were able to share it with their entire school. Some of them even said, hey, I'm going to be at my kid's soccer game watching. It's easy. So like you said, it's mobile and they can get it done. But also the other part is we still do in person now that COVID is over. So if you are that parent or you're a school that says, you know what, our parents connect better in person, well, that's still an option too. So, that's the beauty of kind of what we're doing.
It's
we're
meeting
able to,
people where they are.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the anonymity piece is comforting for some folks. They maybe don't want others to know that they quote unquote need financial aid, and so it's a little bit more reassuring for them to have the virtual wall up that they can
Like you said, we
sit
don't talk about
behind.
money.
Right.
It's shameful.
Right.
So
I'm actually talking about money at my school. I was invited to present to our parent council, and the topic is how to pay for college.
Oh,
All right. So
Right
you're
up
going
your
to take
alley.
some.
I, all of
Go.
this. I'm taking. If you want to come with me, we can make it that road show. We can continue down into Washington County.
Well, I can't tell you that the number of families that we work with from the higher education perspective that they're terrified, and they're saying things like, I didn't save for college. I want to help my child, but I can't, and they're just lost completely. And so I think this work helps in that space too.
Yep. So something you all are saying is just kind of giving me an idea for your all's initiative, maybe for the future. Is this something we could start at a junior high level or an elementary school level? Because a lot of times they didn't prepare. They weren't thinking about it until that senior year in high school, kind of like you need the money now, or they're already in college. They have the money for the first year, but they're like, we don't know how far we can stretch these dollars. And so the discussion does have to happen much sooner.
It does, and there are some things being done. Pennsylvania Treasury Department, Department of Treasury, they have representatives in the field, and they'll do 529 presentations for K to 8 or younger students. There are opportunities that way. We have the PA Career Ready information that goes to the school counselors that they have to provide artifacts for learners.
Chapter 339. Yeah.
And Chapter 339 is another opportunity. So there are touch points, but I think you get into the psychology of it, and so it's not important until it's important.
Right.
We can have all of those other events, we can do all of those other things, but sometimes they fall on deaf ears until you get to that where it's mission critical. And we need to. So I think we can maybe beef that up, and maybe next year we'll add a junior high component. I think that could be an opportunity.
No pressure.
We need. I hear you say you'd like to be a part of.
Absolutely.
You'd like to be a part of our road trip and our campaign.
I think you all are doing a great job. Without me, you guys can come back to the podcast and we'll continue to promote it. But seriously speaking, I'm always on board to help whenever we can. As an Access partner, that's one of the best parts, I think, of this particular job that we have is being able to help the students and the families, help achieve their goals and get the access to the education that they need. This has been a meaty discussion, and hopefully what you all can give me briefly is just like maybe one or two talking points to help those students, the educators, remember why it's important to get on board with the PA FAFSA Go and just complete the initiative. So any tidbits you can have, no pressure to feel like you have to, but just something or even a recap of what we've talked about.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about counselor ratios.
Okay.
Is that okay to do that?
Absolutely.
So, and I have my laptop out with this information because it's too important to get this wrong. This comes from the Pennsylvania School Counselor Association. They have a government relations committee that has done research on where we are versus where everybody else is. And when I say that, I mean Pennsylvania. So just to kind of give you some information, 35 states require comprehensive school counseling programs in public school districts. 30 states require school counselors. Pennsylvania is the only state that does not require a comprehensive school counseling program or mandated positions in schools. We're the only state. So when we think about doing more and doing better, we have to be realistic about there are counselors in buildings with 700 students. And you touched on it earlier. Post-COVID, during COVID, wherever we are right now with COVID, mental health needs are significantly higher than they were before. Systems are in crisis. I think it's safe to say schools are in crisis. Students are in crisis. Educators are in crisis. The system's in crisis. This is not the time to be the only state in the country not having school counselors mandated.
How are we getting that message to legislators or those that could fix that?
We have had folks meet with legislators, and there have been some bipartisan efforts.
Oh, good.
But they've been unfunded.
Sure.
The process and the conversation has been related to being unfunded.
Sure.
So I just want to share one more little piece here of information that came from Amelia Pfeiffer, who's the executive director of the School Counselor Association. And I apologize, I don't have it pulled up here. It would take $300 a student to achieve our goal of being 250 to 1 across the Commonwealth.
Each public school student.
Yes. So there are, if you don't mind me sharing this, there are 2,677 school buildings in Pennsylvania. There are 1,507,186 students as of the date this graphic was made. That could change as people move in and out.
Sure.
To hit this ratio, we need 6,000 more counselors in the Commonwealth.
That's a lot.
The median salary would be $74,950. Now, I'm not hitting that, and I've been a long-time counselor, so take that for
Depends
what
on
you
your
want.
district.
Right. So the investment is significant, $451 million. But what it boils down to, when we think about students and the importance of the work and the importance of them being prepared for life after high school and being successful, productive citizens in the Commonwealth, we hope they stay, $300 per student.
That's, to me, one of the things when I hear you say that, it's kind of like it doesn't seem like a big ask, yet it is. So one of the things I'm big on is advocacy. What do you think that we can do to kind of better advocate to get this accomplished?
I think we all live in schools, in communities that have schools. So I think that we all have the ability to impart our concerns where we live. Now, maybe you're in a system that's meeting the ratio. There are schools in Pennsylvania that are. It's commending them for doing that and for recognizing that importance. I think that we all pay taxes. We have the opportunity to vote. We have the opportunity to meet with our legislators and share what we think is important. PSCA is doing that as an entity. PACAC is doing that as an entity. I'm sure PASFAA is as well. So I think we just keep doing that and continue to show the value of the work while we still try to meet the need with the numbers that we have.
Right.
I think that's what we have to do.
And then if the funding comes, do you think there will be enough people who will want to be school counselors, or will there be a shortage?
I think there's a teacher pipeline issue that we're also dealing with in
there's a
Pennsylvania.
teacher issue.
We could do another podcast on that.
All right. So
That, to me, that would be an opportunity for recruiting
okay.
and for diversifying our population
Yes.
of counselors and for, really kind of changing the framework of what's being offered in Pennsylvania. So to me, it's exciting to think about what could be different.
Right.
Yes.
But the biggest benefit is knowing your students beyond 2 or 3 visits a year.
Absolutely. And I think, again, 250 to 1 is not a huge ask, yet it is. So hopefully that at some point we can kind of get there. In the meantime, again, I'm hoping that those schools who are listening and those parents realize that to use the resources that they do have, whether it's a PHEAA or whether it's the post-secondary schools, and so that you guys aren't just burnt out even more than what you already are. Hey, you may not have any counselors that are there, but I've had teachers actually call and say, hey, you know what, we have some students there, their finance class, and we're talking about student loans and things like this. Can you come in and talk about financial aid?
Right.
Sure, we can. So those things do happen. But again, until we can get to that point, again, I'm hoping that they utilize the resources that are out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was going to be my segue into we know what we know, right? So to our listeners in particular, if they're coming from high schools or anything like that don't necessarily have the support, take advantage of the current resources that are available to you. Whether it's a post-secondary institution, whether it's the 13 higher education access partners that we have. That's our mission, again, to support those efforts. So take advantage of that. If you can't do something in person, take advantage of the resources that have been created specific to PA FAFSA Go, but also there's a number of publications that PHEAA offers that you can distribute to your students and families. Take advantage of access. If you are a school that wants to do additional outreach campaign, and sorry to tout PHEAA, but we've got some wonderful toolkits, FAN and FAFSA toolkits to help you promote an event. We provided a lot of the material, the content. We also provide one thing that I didn't mention. We can provide our heat maps to show how your county is doing in terms of FAFSA completion, right? Not specific to your school, but to your county. Take advantage of the U.S. Department of Education. They offer FAFSA completion data at no cost on their website. It doesn't give you the detail at the student level, but it gives you a count that you can compare from year to year. So I think, and if you're not sure where to start, reach out to one of us or to one of the Access partners. We can kind of bring you in and let you know how to start, how to get something started. Because again, I've got to thank all of the school partners that we have, whether it's post-secondary or secondary, because, you know, without your support, your collaboration, your work, we're not getting the information to the students, right? There's a whole other way we can get to it, but it's a work in progress, so we have to work hand in hand. So my ask really in terms of resources, take advantage of our ability to assist you in getting this message out.
So obviously we're all going to have a common theme, I think, but I guess my takeaway would just be, you know, opportunity. And I think it's our collective goal to ensure that these students, these families have every opportunity available to them. And, you know, completing the FAFSA is such an easy way to clear at least one path, to give them, you know, just yet another option at opportunity.
And I guess I would just add, you know, we talk about financial aid offices as a resource. You don't even care that the student's not coming to your institution. And I think that's what's really important about this collective network and coming together. Our mission and vision is to serve all Pennsylvania learners, and this is an opportunity regardless of where you're at school, secondary, post-secondary. If you need help, there is a resource available for you. So I would just encourage as many people to log on to the website. Again, if you go to PA FAFSA Go, if you just Google that, you'll come to our website, and there, if you go halfway down the page, there's a focus on FAFSA. We just ask your name and your school and your email address, and we'll connect you to the network. We'll have some best practices sharing in the next couple of weeks. And I think that I'm super excited to work with all of you. I think I'm just really happy to continue to do what I love to do and to be able to work with all of you in this capacity. So thank you.
It's been fun.
And thank you all for being here at the Higher Education Access Corner. I do think this was a really good discussion. I'm glad you all are here. I'm thankful for all of the work that you all are doing individually and then collectively as well. You all mentioned some key things that I want hopefully our listeners to take with them and then move along and actually get going to complete those FAFSAs. Number one, deadlines were really, really important. Completing the FAFSA. And one thing we didn't say, I don't believe, how do you complete the FAFSA? Where do you go? Studentaid.gov is actually the website that students want to go to. However, all of the other websites that we mentioned, you can still get to the FAFSA from there because there are links that will still direct you. But the direct link for the Department of Education is studentaid.gov. Again, deadlines are key. Access and opportunity were also key things that you all talked about. So if no one takes away anything else, know that you can complete the FAFSA. It is totally free. Know that there are resources to assist you with getting them done, whether it's on the high school level, post-secondary school level, or state level with PHEAA or PDE. We all have resources. We're all rooting for all students to get it done. So again, I'm Tiffanie DeVan. I have with me Karen Rubican, Will Lindsey, Alyssa Dobson, and Dr. Kim McCurdy. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you at the next Higher Education Access Corner.